Then the word of the Lord came to him, at that place he came to a cave and spent the night there. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenants, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it away." He said, "Go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Now there was a great wind so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks into pieces before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then there was a voice. Then came a voice to him that said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He answered, "I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away." Then the Lord said to him, "Go on your way, and on your way to the wilderness of Damascus. When you arrive, you shall anoint Hazael as king of Aram. Also you shall anoint Jehu, son of Nishi, as king of Israel, and you shall anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, of Abimel, as prophet in your place. Whoever escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu shall kill, and whoever escapes from the sword of Jehu, Elisha shall kill. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him." This is God's good word for us, God's beloved people. Thanks be to God. So, if you go all the way back to ancient history, you go all the way back to the beginning of Genesis, or rather Genesis chapter 2 and 3. One of the thesis statements for the existence of Eve at all, right? So Adam, the first guy, is in the garden. He is alone. He desires a helpmate. As he says, it is not good for man to be alone. And we try out the animals, and the animals, as much as I love our pets, hello, Esther, go with mama. As much as we love our pets, it is not an exchange for actual human contact. Because even here at creation, it is declared that it is not good for humanity to be alone. A lot of the times when we tell the story of people standing up for what is right, we tell them as singular stories, right? History is easier to remember if you have one protagonist. But the truth is very seldom is that protagonist truly alone. George Washington, right? George Washington, great colonial general, first president, certainly has a heavy burden placed upon him, but he's not alone. He may be the only lead general, but he had other people who worked for him, right? Famously, this is the origin story of Alexander Hamilton, right? Is there right alongside him the whole time. Does he have the burden of leadership, and is that unique? Yes. But George Washington could not single-handedly defeat the British. It did, by the way, take an army. He led that army, but it took an army. He had a literal army behind him, even if Congress was not always. Right? He was not truly alone. Had a singular responsibility, but he was not alone. Same thing about Martin Luther King, right? Martin Luther King, major civil rights leader, he's the headline name. He's the one we remember, but he traveled in a group of other leaders. He had Abernathy, he had John Lewis, he had all of these people around him all the time. Did he have the singular burden of leadership? Yes, but he was not truly alone. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, theologian, stands up to the Nazis, right? Same deal, right? He was singular leader, does end up in prison largely alone, but before he ends up in prison, he has the whole confessing movement, a whole movement, small though it was, a network of other people who stood with him and stood up to the Germans stood up to the Nazis. To be truly alone, to stand truly alone, is a tremendously difficult thing. Because for humans, it is not how we were meant to live. It is not good for humans to be alone. This is why the top punishment within the Texas Department of Criminal Justice and most criminal justice systems is solitary confinement. It is awful. It is truly a punishment. You would think, those of us who spend lives in, over busy lives with too many people in it, we might think, yes, a little bit of solitary confinement sounds great, and that's probably lovely for a week, but day in, day out, only alone is detrimental to the human condition. It is not how we are meant to live. And it is the position that Elijah thinks that he is in at the beginning of chapter 19 of 1 Kings. And in order to understand the big picture of what's happening here, we do have to do a little bit of prep work to get us there. Okay, so Elijah is a prophet for the northern kingdom of Israel. So at some point in history, there was one kingdom, Israel. It splits in two. Northern kingdom, Israel. Southern kingdom, Judah. Judah is where the temple is. That's where Jerusalem is. Those are the people who stay faithful for a much longer time. The northern kingdom of Israel has way more problems way earlier. And Elijah's job as prophet is to show up, and he's talking to King Ahab. Hey, Ahab, this wife of yours, Jezebel, has brought in all of these foreign gods, killed hundreds of God's prophets, replaced them with the prophets of Baal. This is a problem. Ahab waffles. Ahab essentially lets Elijah take on the prophets of Baal in a spiritual cage match. And so they assemble on Mount Bethel, and it is a prophecy off, right? There's this pyre there's this sacrifice that needs to get lit on fire, and there are 450 prophets of Baal, and there is one Elijah, right? So in one corner, it's 450 dudes. In the other corner is one dude. This is chapter 18 of the book of Kings. And the prophets of Baal dance around, and they cut themselves with swords, and their pyre does not catch on fire. It doesn't light. Right? They do all these things to the false god Baal that Jezebel brought into the picture, and nothing happens. Now, Elijah is a heck of a showman. So Elijah lets them go first. They fail. He then takes a thing of water, and has it dumped on the pyre. Then he has another thing of water, and has it dumped on the pyre. And he has a third thing of water and has it dumped on the pyre. Then again, the whole trick is this thing has to catch on fire, right? It is a burnt offering. The burnt offering needs to burn, and he's just dumped gallons of water on this thing. He prays once to God. Naturally, thing catches on fire. This is a moment where he defeats the prophets of Baal. He then kills them with the sword, right? This is just a more violent time. And so he goes 450 to 1, and he walks away as not only the victor, but the sole survivor. He won the cage match. He wins. But then right at the top of chapter 19, he gets a message from Jezebel, who, although he's defeated the prophets of Baal, she is still queen. And Jezebel essentially says, hey, you better run, because I'm going to kill you. And that's when Elijah kind of crumbles. Doesn't lose faith, but falls apart. He wanders into the desert. He collapses under a broom tree. The angels actually feed him so that he'll not... It's really easy to die in the desert, friends. Still easy to die in the desert, right? He kind of falls apart because And you hear it in his explanation to God. He feels alone. He feels absolutely like the only... Didn't set my place. We're not in Matthew today. Hold on one second, friends. Let me flip back to the book of Kings. There we go. Sorry about that. You hear it in verse 10. He said, I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. For the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. I alone am left, and they are seeking my life to take it away. He really thinks, he really feels, right, that he is the last man standing, that he is the last faithful human in the northern kingdom. And because of that, he feels absolutely isolated and alone. It is not good for humanity to be alone, and that is what he is feeling in that moment. In the rush of battle, in the rush of combat, no, he's supremely confident. He really does those things. He really has the faith to do them, going 450 to 1, and he wins. And even after he wins, Jezebel says, nanny, boo-boo, it doesn't matter. I'm still the queen. I can still kill you. Yeah, you defeated 450 prophets of Baal. I'll import 450 more. They must be a dime a dozen. Maybe she gets a group rate or something. I don't know. But she's just recruiting and importing prophets by the truckload. But get another truckload of them. They seem supremely gullible. A, they keep following Jezebel. B, they're following Baal. These are not smart guys. Just get more. You're going to lose in the end, Elijah. And so he collapses. Again, not from lack of belief in God. He has a conversation directly with God. He's the prophet of God. He believes. This is not even Jonah. He is not running from the hard job. He already did the hard job. Or did an extremely hard job. This is similar in structure to Jonah in the belly of the fish, but A, he doesn't run away that far, and B, he already did a really hard thing. He's not like, I don't want to do it, God. He's like, God, this is really hard. I'm alone. And so this is a story not just of God giving us what we need, but understanding when we need what we need. He didn't need a reminder when he's going 450 to 1. His confidence is high. He's feeling God's power in him. He faces that. Fine. But here at his lowest point, not in lack of belief, but just in a feeling of absolute isolation, that is when God shows up in the similar way to how God shows up for Moses. But for Moses, it was these big, bombastic things. But here, God is not in the big and bombastic thing. God is in the thing that starts to give Elijah some peace and security. Picking up in verse 11. He said, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Now there was a great wind, so strong that it was splitting mountains and breaking rocks into pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of sheer silence. As we know, God is in that silence, because we see that is when Elijah responds with reverence. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his mantle. You're not supposed to look at God directly, you can burn up. Wrapped his face in his mantle and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? So here, in this first comfort of Elijah, Elijah is reminded that he, at least, is not alone because he carries God with him, right? This is fundamentally true no matter what, no matter how alone you feel. We've talked about this before. No matter how alone you feel, you have God's presence with you. That is part of it. The other part of it comes in the end of this passage, right? At the very end, in verse 18, yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. This is that other piece. Elijah, you may feel alone. Elijah, you are not alone. There are only a few thousand, but there are a few thousand. And so you are not the only one who stands up for the name of the Lord. There is but a few is way different to the human soul. A few is way different than none. And then Elijah gets a sense he's going to have some new allies. He's going to have Jehu, who's going to start harassing, who's going to get anointed by God and start harassing Ahab from within. You have Hazael, who's going to start harassing Ahab from without. And now he's about to have his kind of right-hand person, his successor that he gets to train. He's going to have Elisha. So you have a sense that, hey, God is with you. Here is the presence of God showing up. Hey, here are some direct folks who are going to take on the work with you. And by the way, because of the nature of how God works, you are not actually alone. This is exactly what Elijah needs to hear. He gets back out. He gets back to it. He hears what he needs to hear from God when he needs to hear it. Would he have rather heard this earlier? Maybe. I don't know. Bible doesn't give us that. But here in this moment, this difficult moment for Elijah, he gets exactly what he needs when he needs it. This will look different. This will look different for every person. But it is a reminder, certainly, that we are not alone in whatever it is that we are doing. If that is the thing you need, that this is the moment you need that, it is a forever reminder that you, like Elijah, are not alone in what you face. You have the power of God, and you have people around you, whether you recognize that or not. But it is the broader aspect of God's provision. No, we may not have what we want when we want it. Instead, we have what we need when we need it. That Elijah gets the tools he needs, the comfort he needs, the peace he needs, when he recognized a need for it. So if you find yourself under a broom tree, whatever your version, I doubt anything that needs that dry a climate grows in this part of Texas. Although right now it might. I have no idea. It's 117,000 degrees. When you find yourself under that broom tree, whatever your version of that is, maybe it's you feel alone, maybe it's you feel overburdened, maybe it's the cares of this world, whatever. It's going to look different for all of us. Our struggles are in some ways as unique as the person experiencing them. I doubt you will have the exact experience of Elijah. Luckily, Jezebel's dead and no longer importing idiot prophets of Baal to cause you trouble. But whatever your version of being under that broom tree is, God is there for you in that moment, with what you need, when you need it, with the support, power, strength, spirit, and community to carry on. Elijah seeks it out. He goes to Mount Horeb. He goes to the Mount of the Lord. He goes in the same cave that Moses hid in, right? After he gets nursed back to health, he goes to the mountain of the Lord. He seeks out God. If you're wondering where God is in your life, look for God. Seek God. Open your eyes. God is probably there, but it helps to seek so that you can be aware of what you find when you find it. What you need when you need it. Let us pray. Gracious, loving God, we give you thanks. We give you thanks when we find ourselves under a broom tree. There you are. We give you thanks when we come to your mountain. We can know your presence. God, help us to do that. To know that we're not alone, for we always have you. To know that we're not alone because you move in this world and in the lives of others, not just in our lives. And that whatever our version of burden looks like, whatever puts us under that broom tree, there are you, with your presence, to speak into even the sheerest of silences. We can know we will have what we need when we need it. In Jesus' most holy name we pray. Amen.